New Zealand is a beautiful country, and probably the best way to see it is over the bonnet of a truck. The story starts in the South Island. We'll be looking at hauling milk from the high country. We'll take a look at one of the biggest truck museums in the world. Go cattle carting in the Clutha Valley of the South Island. We'll cross the South Island in a bulk operation, visit Christchurch, and come back again on a freight run. Then up into the mountains for a load of logs. On the North Island, we'll work with an operator in the King Country, pulling sheep and cattle to market. We'll take a quick look at urban operations in Auckland and find that New Zealand has some pretty heavy trucking outfits. We travel with off-highway loggers pulling all-up weights of around 120 tonne. Then to the very top of the North Island to meet Tex Wilson and do a sheep run up towards Cape Reinga. And we'll also have a quick look at some of the better-known aspects of Kiwi land. We'll go fishing, fly over frozen glaciers, jet boat up magnificent rivers, and lots of other pretty interesting things as we go trucking around New Zealand. It's an early start on our first day in New Zealand. For this story, we've met up with the team from New Zealand Truck and Driver magazine. And well before the sun rises, we meet an empty milk tanker in the South Island town of Timaru. New Zealand is known for its dairy products, exported worldwide. While dairy herds are being reduced in many parts of the world, they're actually on the increase in New Zealand as many sheep producers convert to dairying in the face of collapsed world wool prices. Anchor Milk runs one of the biggest dairy processing operations in the Southern Hemisphere, probably the world, and has a large fleet of trucks travelling around the clock, pulling the white liquid. We're heading into the mountains of the South Island, and even in summer, it's cool and beautiful. We're trucking along with Wayne Pearce in his Cummins-powered Foden, heading from Timaru south to Palmerston, then up into the mountains to pick up the morning's milk from two huge dairies. Wayne reckons he's seen the growth of dairying in the South Island over recent times.
Well, since I started the company, we're only picking up 1.6 million litres per day. Now we're just over 5.2 litres a day.
5.2 million litres?
Yeah, so which is a big climb. When I started, we only had 16 trucks, most of them all A trains. Well, now we've got just on 40, and most of them all 8-wheelers now.
But why the 8-wheeler rigids with drawbar trailers?
Yeah, we can get more milk on. That's the biggest thing. With the A trains, you're only looking at 21,000 legal. This thing here, you're looking at 28.7, 28.8, so...
28,000 litres of milk. The road winds up into the beautiful mountainous hinterland, a land of snow-capped mountains and crystal-clear mountain streams. In the Ranfurly district, we drive into the first dairy, and it's all action from the New Zealand Truck and Driver team, while Wayne pumps the milk.
Well, today we're looking at a Foden Alpha, which is a British-based truck, strong association with the Kiwi brand through the PACCAR organisation. It's got an M11 Cummins in it. It's got the new Eaton 16-speed synchro gearbox. It's an 8-wheeler, and it's on milk pickup, which is a pretty normal sort of application here in New Zealand. I forget how many millions of tonnes of milk they move every season, but you know, there's a lot of milk tankers in New Zealand.
This dairy is milking 2,500 cows twice a day. That's sure a lot of milk. One tanker barrel is full now, so it's time to move on to the second dairy. The road soon changes to unsealed dirt, or shingle as it's known in the South Island.
I'd say most of our work you'd be probably looking about 40–50% of shingle road, so it is.
In the cool climate of the south, refrigeration isn't a huge problem to transport operators.
It's just we can't pick up anything over 20 degrees or something, so... but no, when the milk goes into the tank, that's it. It just goes back to the factory as it is and goes in their big silos, and then they chill it down when they transfer it over from into the appropriate plants. Oh, well, here we are now. We'll just... What I'm going to do now, I'm going to put in the high split, put the PDO in, and then I go out and hook up a pickup hose and put some figures in the ultracast, and then hopefully put some milk in. It's a flow meter. It tells us how many litres are going into the tank, and it also makes a recording there for the when I get back to download into the computer of how many litres we actually picked up from the farm, and also the temperature and how many litres we actually got on the truck.
Now fully loaded with more than 28,000 litres of farm fresh milk on board, it's time for the 250 kilometre lead back to the Anchor Dairy processing plant. We've hitched a ride right to the bottom of the New Zealand mainland, to the main city of Southland, Invercargill, and the small industrial town of Blythe. From Blythe, there's nothing much to the south of here, except Antarctica, in comparison to Australia, we're hundreds of kilometres further south than the southern extremes of Tasmania. Just out of Invercargill is Orotai Beach. It's November, early summer, and the locals rush to the drive-in beach as the day's maximum temperature is expected to reach a blistering 13 degrees. And the surf's up. In Invercargill, we meet an interesting bloke, Bill Richardson. He has a deep love of trucks and transport coming from his childhood. He's built his family business into what he describes as a modest industrial group that has an annual turnover measured in hundreds of millions of dollars. Bill has a lifelong love of trucks and has put together what has to be one of the most comprehensive truck museums in the world.
Well, I collected truck brochures since I was 8, so I suppose it was a natural progression. And I found my grandfather's old International. He bought an International new in 1933, a model called a D1, and I knew it had been owned by a little garage out the road, so I tracked it down to the brother-in-law of the garage owner, I think actually, and he was only 2 blocks from home here. And because I've lived next door here since I was 4, and with a 9-year gap in the next street, and so I found this truck and dragged it home. It was just bones, chassis and no cab, and that was 1967. And at Christmas that year, 67, 68, we were in Christchurch, and my wife said to me, without realising, I think, what she was starting, said, "There's an old truck down that street." So I wheeled round, and it was an identical one. And I waited till he was getting a warrant of fitness or a set of plugs or something. And I waited till the owner come back. I said, "I'm looking for one of these for parts, and do you know where there's another one?" He said, "No, but if you've got $170, you can have this one." So I gave him $170 and drove it home from Christchurch.
Bill's museum has come a long way since the 60s.
I suppose the first 10 years I might have had 20 trucks,
And what have you got now?
About 150.
Probably the most eye-catching vehicle in the museum is a 1940 Dodge tanker that captures the flowing designs of the period.
It's an RX 70 Dodge Airflow, and rated as a 4-tonner by Dodge, and it's powered by a 331 cubic inch 6-cylinder side valve Dodge engine, and it's one of the last batch of 75 which were built for Texaco. This truck was built in February 1940. It's the 4th one built, and according to the experts there are 7 left.
While the museum today has trucks representative of most periods, Bill Richardson's interest started with a much narrower focus.
Apart from 1 or 2 of those interesting ones because of the family connection, like my grandfather's into, my original interest was American trucks of the late 30s till the 49 they actually stopped coming to New Zealand, but you could get the few American trucks come in the early 50s under special license. So that was sort of the era that I was interested in, say from 36 to early 50s, And I had a real high success rate in picking up some quite rare American trucks of that era, You know, things that I didn't think I would ever find, like Stewart and some of those rare brands, you know. Found a few Rios and one Stewart and some Diamond Teas. And then I thought, when I thought I'd exhausted all that, I would complete the collection with British trucks of the same general era, you know, because they were such a part of our history. So I did that.
But like most collectors, the limits of his vision grew.
Then I met an old guy in Nelson who was very keen on early American trucks in the late 20s and early 30s. And he said, you should be collecting them, they're very interesting, those trucks in that era, you know. And I said, oh, yeah, well, I don't know about that. So, as if to will me to do it, he died and left me one all fully restored. A beautiful old 1928 Graham Brothers. And I'd have to tell you, it worked. Yeah.
There are two types of trucks in the Richardson collection, the beautifully restored models and a large number of workers that, apart from a good wash, could have been out working in the South Island yesterday.
The ones that were rare enough but weren't good enough to leave on display, we've done. The ones that are good enough to leave original, we've left original, because you can actually go and spend a lot of money on those and not make them a lot more interesting than they are in their original state.
The rocky coastline of the southern cradle of New Zealand is nothing if not beautiful, the landscape sculpted by the fierce roaring 40s. Today, sheep reign supreme here, but a local still enjoys the fresh, cool Pacific waters. Following the coast east of Invercargill, country roads meander through a region known as the Catlins. This is mostly sheep and cattle country that runs right to the pretty fishing beaches settled between rocky points. At the end of the drive through the Catlins is the jagged rocky fist of Nugget Point and its group of red rock formations flung across the waters. The 1869 vintage lighthouse has kept shipping safe off this treacherous coastline for 130 years. On rocks around Nugget Point, fur seals and sea lions are now abundant after being hunted almost to extinction half a century ago. And in a secluded little bay behind the point, we get a glimpse of the rare yellow-eyed penguin as they surf into the beach and head home after a day's fishing at sea. And it's time to get back on the road to just north of the Nuggets to the Clutha River. We follow it inland through Balclutha to Clydesvale, and there we catch up with rural operator Clutha Valley Transport, owned by the Williams family. Michael and his mum are in control of the operation this morning. Evan Williams is out on the job. Michael says the fleet has grown to meet the needs of a rural operation running short-haul livestock, line-haul livestock across both the North and South Islands, and extensive fertiliser and seeding operations in the Clutha Valley.
There's the 8 line-haul trucks and the follow-on departments, like the wee 8-tonners that would for collective stuff. The 4 bulk spreaders, and their follow-on, just small tip trucks and what have you, and there's about 15 staff at the moment. Goes up to 17, 18 in the peak of it.
It's very much a family affair started by Evan Williams nearly 30 years ago.
Well, the old man, he was with South Target Transport originally, and then the opportunity for this, so we took over this in 73, I think it was, and just I work here, I'm here, brother he's driving, and sister, she's got an office in Balclutha, all within the, all working for Clutha Valley, yeah.
It's time to get on the road with Clutha Valley driver Jimmy Walsh. The The load is a mob of steers all heading for the 5-star beef feedlot in Ashburton on the east coast. The mob is put together in mobs, picked up by a line haul truck and a smaller pickup truck. Back in the Clutha Valley yard, Jim pulls the Mack into the shed while he waits for the pickup truck to bring the last little mob in. And trouble. A break on the lead axle of the trailer has thrown a lining, so it's all hands to the pump. Wheels are pulled off, hubs are dismantled, an excreta catch is placed under the truck while the cattle wait patiently, and the brake linings are pulled off. Studs bashed out of the rims and new hubs imported from South Africa set up. New seals are put in place. New brake linings reassembled on the axles. New hubs slip back on. Bearings packed and tightened. Wheels put back on and tensioned. And in less than an hour, we're ready to travel. The cattle from the little truck named the Flea are transshipped. And we're on our way. The Williams run something like 90% Macks on the long distance runs.
I bought one off Tulloch's originally, an old F, and just steadily worked it from there. But what the backup and what have you on the Mac, and they're a reliable vehicle, then just, you know, you stick with your one brand, sort of keeps things, you know, cuts your costs back.
There's been a shift in livestock haulage in the South Island in recent years, away from traditional sheep to cattle.
More the cattle now with the dairy industry coming into the area, but all our local works, we've got 3 or 4 works in South, and there's one just down in South Clutha, plus the line haul stuff to Canterbury, North Island dairy stuff, but and the sheep side as well. Sheep's still predominant in the area, but you know, cattle are catching up, yeah.
Like most rural areas, Michael Williams says depression in the regions is the biggest issue facing rural transport operators today.
Just a downturn, there's not the money there. The cockies aren't spending, everything's to a minimum in that respect. That's on the sheep side of it. The dairying is very buoyant, but it's still got a fine line too between successful and what have you, yeah.
It's about 300 kilometres to Ashburton, and Jimmy Walsh settles down to the job in hand. The steers will all be eating grain in the Ashburton feedlot before dark. The Clutha River is swollen from the rain that inundated much of the southern part of the South Island. The Clutha runs from the mountain ranges of the South Island. These mountains make up a magnificent backbone that forms huge lakes like Wakatipu before they fold into the great fjords of the west coast. We're in the Otago region, still in the far south of the island, on the Dart River. This river is a wide gravelly watercourse carved by flooding snow water during the annual melt in the mountains. By December, the stream is running fast and in places shallow. The way to see it is by the roller coaster ride in a jet boat.
Back there you're sitting on a 500 cubic inch Chevrolet motor which drives the drive shaft which goes into a Hamilton jet unit.
In a 35-kilometre ride up the Dart, the altitude of the river actually climbs 150 metres. The valley is bounded by snow-capped mountain ranges. This is remote, unsettled, a world away from the cafe culture and tourism of the main town of Otago, Queenstown. Even with the pulsing power of a 365 cubic inch Chevy donk in the jet boat, you feel pretty tiny and non-essential in this raw mountain country. Not all that long ago, this valley was the upper reaches of a giant glacier that chewed out the valley and formed the huge Lake Wakatipu. Today, the Dart River pretty much encapsulates the experience of the South Island, adventure and an incredibly beautiful landscape. Across the huge Lake Wakatipu, the steamer Earnslow plies its trade. The engine room bustles with action as the great drive shafts turn. The SS Earnslow used to carry 1,800 sheep or hundreds of tons of wool and provisions the length of the lake. Now fully refurbished, her freight is tourists and travellers wishing to get a glimpse of what life was like on Wakatipu in the days before jet boats and bungee jumping. And with the sunset now, the Earnslow pulls into the fairyland of Queenstown, and it's time for us to get back to work. In the little community of Stillwater, the Croft family runs a medium-sized transport business that's been operating since the 20s. Today, Frank Croft manages the business.
But my father was an amateur boxer, turned professional, and through the money he got from boxing, bought a Model T truck, and that was in about 1928.
Yeah.
And so from there, he just really started from there. Well, in those days, it was really mine support. They actually cut mine crops down and cut in the local coal mines. Coal mine in this area was very big in those days.
The Croft business has always had a focus on timber, and we get a ride with a modern-day timber hauler. Frank Croft's father moved from cutting mining props to timber haulage when mills opened along the Grey River.
The most visible part of our business is the logging. We've probably got about 9 or 10 trucks working on logs all the time, so they seem to be the most visible ones. But really, the rest of the fleet is pretty well bulk in general.
Kevin drives the Nissan UD truck. He's been working for the Crofts for 2.5 years. The truck winds up mountain tracks on a bleak, misty South Island day. The pine plantation is clear-felled by the bush gang and hauled up to a ridge for processing and cutting to size. The logs are loaded. And chained. And the Nissan starts the long decline to the valley floor down the slippery, wet track. The Croft fleet traditionally used international trucks, but with ownership and name change to Iveco, Frank Croft faces a dilemma and is currently trying what he describes as a cosmopolitan fleet, made up of several different makes. And it's the Japanese trucks that have proved a surprise in this operation.
The biggest surprise would be the Japanese trucks, where really the source of maintenance is really only regular maintenance, and really the parts that go into those trucks in the first, 700,000 kilometres would be surprisingly low.
Bulk and general freight make up much of the Croft fleet's business, pulling export timber and bulk commodities such as coal from the west coast to Christchurch and the Canterbury region. So we hitch a ride with the bulky Alistair Curtis, driving his faithful S-Line International. Coal is loaded at a small mine near the town of Reefton, starting with weighing the empty truck for a tear weight. Then the truck and trailer are loaded. The loader's levelled, and it's back up the steep pinch to the weighbridge to get a final weight. And down, out of the hills, through the valleys. And Alistair swings onto the main Cross Island road. We'll cross the tall ranges of the central South Island via the Lewis Pass. The view in the mountains is stunning. The road over Lewis Pass is considerably lower in altitude than Arthur's Pass, the other trans-island artery. Even in summer, the altitude of Arthur's Pass is cold and wet and is often snowbound in winter. After we cross Lewis Pass, it's just about all downhill to Christchurch, and the landscape opens up into the lush valleys and plains of Canterbury. In no time, we're in the urban traffic of Christchurch. The coal is unloaded. Tipper bodies are given a tub, and the S-Line is reloaded with gravel for the west coast. Alistair's run out of legal driving hours, so we meet up with other Croft drivers at the Waipara pub, spend the night before heading home in the morning. Christchurch is a beautiful city on the South Island's east coast. A historic city, today a mecca with markets and a population that puts a high value on the arts. And definitely a popular destination for tourists. But before daylight, it's back to work and we climb into the trucks. We've swapped trucks and are heading back in an international T-line pulling general freight. This gives us a chance to talk to long-time Croft driver John Doolin, with a 17-year career driving in the business. JD reckons that all that time ago he was put on a 3-month trial, and he says that as nothing was said, he must be almost considered permanent. I asked JD what was special about being a truck driver in New Zealand.
It's the countryside, I think, mate. Yeah, you get around, friendliness of the people. Yeah, no, it's pretty good, but it's getting a bit harder now with all the regulations and rules.
And what are legal loads like in New Zealand?
I can cut 28-tonne payload. That's right up, yeah. Yeah, so I run 21-tonne sticker on the truck and 25 on the trailer. So, yeah. But to get 28-tonne on, just about, yeah, you've got to be right on all the axles. You get 27 comfortably, no problem.
And what's in the working day for a South Island truck driver?
I start at 5 o'clock every morning, and finish anything from 4:30 or 7 o'clock at night. West Coast spotter. Usually when I go home here, I'll be finished by 5 o'clock hopefully today. But over in Christchurch, some nights it's 7, 7:30. Time to get back out to Waipara. So every second day I go to Christchurch. I go from the coast. I just take, we get a lot of export packs over the wharf, go to Australia, from Keely's. Usually, see one day I'll go over, unload, and I'll go around Christchurch picking all my pickups. See, we haven't got no depot over there, we've got to go around and pick everything up. Some days you might have 1 pickup, and other days you might have 14. Then I usually go back out, start Waipara. Then the next day I'll come home, and Murray, the other Joe that does it, he'll come over and do the same as what I do. So one week I go over 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Then the next week I'll go over Tuesday, Thursday. So it's not every day you got a truck at Christchurch.
Driving times are strictly enforced in New Zealand. 11 hours driving time, 14 hours total on service time. So the drivers often stay over in accommodation, as we did last night.
Yeah, I could load up and go home, but like my boss said, it's $50 to stay in a pub tonight. It's a lot cheaper than a month off and $1,000.
By early afternoon, we've made the crossing, and JD wheels his truck into the yard at Stillwater, ready for West Coast deliveries. And it's time for us to move on and experience one of the real highlights of the West Coast. Mount Cook towers 3,754 metres high. That's nearly 5,000 feet taller than Australia's highest mountain, Kosciuszko. This is glacier country, and the best and most comfortable way to experience the mountains is from a helicopter. We're in the North Island now, and back to a bit of heavy trucking. It's still dark as we find our way into the rough bushlands up country from Lake Taupo. It's here New Zealand's biggest and heaviest trucks run, the off-highway loggers. We're travelling with driver Guy Eastwood, and as these trucks work around the clock, we do a running driver change in the early hours of the morning. Guy keeps the truck rolling towards an unloading point at a large timber mill near Taupo. Even though it's the height of summer, the morning up here has a sharp chill. Guy unchains and we wait to unload. Soon the logs come off quickly. And Guy heads the old Pacific out into the scrub for another load. Chris Blythe runs Blythe Transport out of Taupo, and this Pacific has knocked up an incredible life on the logs.
Pacific's imported from Canada. It's 11 years old and would have roughly done about 6 million miles, I would think. It's all fairly hard going out here in the off-highway with average loads of 80 to 90 tonne, which pay a net load, which makes us 130 gross.
All the trucks are scheduled to different loading skids from a central control office. We travel into the pine and start to load. Skid by skid, the logs are put in place. The trailers have a high centre of gravity, and driving on rough roads needs care and experience. The loader adjusts the load and guy chains up. While a little long on the tooth, the Pacific is still a sweet truck to drive. It's powered by a 425 horsepower Cat, drives through an 18-speed Road Ranger transmission to Rockwell diffs, running on a 6-rod suspension.
The old American iron still seems to be able to, is the one to beat out here. There are a few, say 4 European trucks out here which have advantages, but they're not. It's not as though they're picking a load a day up on us at all. No.
Fletcher Logging runs the logging operation, and widespread use of private logging roads allows the use of heavy truck configurations.
Off-highway is all the internal network of roads within the forest rather than any public highways. These are all private roads out here, the forestry company roads. And like with a unit like this, we cannot go on the public highway at all. We have certain points where we can cross it, where there's concrete under the road to strengthen it.
The Pacific pulls into a railhead this time. And again, guy unchains, and an older tonneau loader does the deed. There's been a lot of changes in logging in New Zealand over the years. Some years ago there was a choice of only a couple of log lengths. Today logs are cut to meet the market's needs.
But today they cut the logs shorter for the customer wants logs down to 3.7, 2.6. There are so many different cuts, and the way the bush is harvested today with the mechanical harvesting has come in, especially in the last 5 years, to probably mechanically 80% of the bush would be mechanically harvested today.
I get a chance to step out of the old Pacific into a new Scania owned by Shane Comer. Dino's the driver. The Scania certainly has the comfort and space, and Dino, he reckons he just loves the Swedish beast. It's the same story all over again. Head out way up bush and loaded a series of skids. chain up the load, and back to the railhead, where once again we catch up with Guy and the Pacific. These logging operations are kept going around the clock.
We basically do a 12-hour shift, 5 days a week, which well, normally about 3 loads a day each, of about an 80k lead on average. Some days you may do 4 with shorter carts, but that's sort of an average day for ourselves in the truck.
I asked Guy what he reckoned was the main challenge facing drivers in New Zealand today.
Doing it safely today, really. There's a lot more emphasis on safety out here than there ever was, and I think really to do it safely and to have had a good driving record without any major safety blemishes. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of driver training and bringing younger people into it. They seem to be thrown into a deeper at the deep end by major companies, and a lot don't really know what they're doing. I find it's a problem. No, the main thing for me each day is to put out a good day's productivity and to do it safely.
From logging in the beautiful Taupo district, it's like moving to a different world when you drive into the city of Auckland. Even here, the best way to see the place is from a truck, and we're travelling with a unit from the Car and Haslam fleet. The truck is driven by Mo, and he knows the ins and outs of Auckland town. Swing loaders are all the go with container transport, and this takes up the bulk of Mo's day. We unload and set off down to the wharves and join the wait for loading. Mo sets the adjustable trailer for a heavy 20-foot container. And when the loader finally arrives, it all happens quickly. Into the traffic again and out to an industrial area to unload.
We're heading towards trying to get bigger loads and longer vehicles. We believe that the longer vehicles are going to be able to give us safer vehicles and bring our, especially our logging trucks, get the height of the logging trucks down. But it takes a long time to get these things through. We've got to prove to everybody that it's going to be safe.
Kelvin Bonney is the chair of the Board of the Road Transport Forum of New Zealand and is the president of the National Road Carriers Association. He says the biggest issue facing transport in New Zealand is the road user charges. He says having the road transport industry presenting a unified voice to government through the RTF has made a difference with the country's legislators.
It's made a hell of a difference in government. Everybody. We get a bloody good ear now. Like we've turned the funding authorities around. The Trans Fund that fund the roads and transit. We've seen a huge turnaround in our ability to talk to the CVIU, which is the policing department for the road transport industry. We're working with them now, which has been quite difficult. They see us as a good chance of revenue rather than an industry. So we're quite pleased with the way that's going.
Kiwis are a pretty hospitable lot, and it seems just about everyone wants to take your fishing mate. I took up the invite with mate Cole Smith from Tauranga. The day was certainly a bit of magic, good as gold. Way out in the Pacific, we dropped about a kilometre of line onto what the depth sounder assured us was the peak of a submarine mountain. And in no time, these blue nose were coming up on the multiple hook rigs. Great eating fish with white meat.
messing around with these little wee things like that. Grandbaby, how
Two small ones. Yeah. They're little slices.
Another 500 metres to go. Still bloody tugging away, isn't it?
Oh, look at it. So there's a red snapper. I've never seen a red snapper.
We've got them that big.
It might be away from the trucks, but a fishing trip off the NZ coast is a pretty wild and productive experience. From Tauranga, it's out bush again into the King Country. The locals reckon this little town of Dayal was so far out in the sticks I'd be lucky to find it. But what I did find was a delightful village in a pretty valley of farmland. And there, in this little village, is run one of the best turned out fleets in the country, PGF Transport. The fleet is run by Bill and Bryce Poole, and I caught up with them on that sunny Dayal morning. They immediately volunteered their stock organiser, John Lincoln, to talk to me. They reckoned he was working the fleet before they were born, so if you want history, he's just the fellow to talk to.
I'm probably the best one to tell it to. I've been with the firm coming up 40 years. I started driving a little 5-ton comma. That was in 1960. I've actually did about 36 years driving the last 3 years, or 30 years driving rather. I had 6 years on the farm for PGF Transport. They had a farm here in Dayal, and I've been in the office as a stock organiser for the last 3 years, yeah. We've just come up with the trucks. We've come through from the A5 Bedfords to Echo Internationals, Leylands, Fodens, and mainly Fodens and Kenworths over the last, say, 10 years, and quite a lot of international, like S-lines and that, eh? But mainly Fodens and Kenworths over the last 10 years anyway.
So I lined up a lift on one of PGF's stock trips. We left Dayal way before daylight and wound our way right up into the mountains to load lambs from a forestry lease. Cold and damp, the mist swirled over the saddle where we loaded. The local stock agent drafted the lambs off the mothers straight onto the truck. Even while we loaded, more ewes and lambs were being mustered. Dogs are essential to sheep work in the mountains. The best part of 1,000 lambs were drafted onto the truck, and it's time to take them to market, to the weekly sales at Pew Pew.
We do a lot of long haul stuff, you know, a lot of stuff in the 400 or 500 kilometres, well 400 anyway. We cover all the North Island, not much short haul. We do a lot of sales stuff, probably more work stuff than anything, and a lot of transferring farm to farm for land court farming. That's the government-owned blocks here.
Only a couple of hours after being drafted from their mums, the lambs are being unloaded at the sale yards at Pew Pew. No sooner unloaded, and the Foden has to head out for a load of cattle for the same sale. At a different farm now, the rear trailer is reversed onto the ramp. The drawbar pin is released from the driver's seat and the body closes flush with the trailer to allow straight through loading. and it doesn't take long to load the cattle onto the truck and trailer that converts from 4 sheep decks to 2 cattle decks. PGF stock organiser John Lincoln reckons logbooks and restricted driver times are the biggest problems facing the industry today.
Well, probably our biggest problem is logbook. You know, we're in a, well, not a back country, but in a country area, and you go to a work centre like this in the town or a coastal area, something like that, and your drivers do a day's work and then they've got to get home, or they get halfway home and their time's run out. It's a big decision to make for administration and the drivers. So, yeah. Well, I think the hours have got to be a bit longer than the 11-hour working day, because it's only a half a day for most guys, young fellas. I think more flexibility, especially in the livestock side of things, because you're up against everything with livestock. Like you can't leave them on the truck overnight while you have a rest or anything like that. They've either got to be unloaded and reloaded or whatever. Yeah.
Well, Bruce, we run 5 trucks out of this yard here. We're based in Kaiko, which is right dead centre of the Bay of Islands. Beautiful area, son. A lot of cattle in this area. A lot of traditional farmers. Been farming here for years and years and years.
We're right up north now, and this is the land of characters, and one of the best known is Tex Wilson, one of the principals of Cooper Wilson Transport. Born and bred in Kaikoui, Tex is just a brimful of admiration for his country. The latest addition to the fleet is a DAF, and we're to spend the day travelling north to pick up sheep at Turiati Station, right up towards Cape Reinga, the tip top of the North Island.
Well, today, Bruce, will be going up north. So we're approximately about 300 k's from the North Cape. And you'll be going right up to the top of the island today, and today we'll be transferring lambs for Landcorp from one station to another, and it'll be approximately 800 to 1,000 lambs coming down today on that unit. And it's just a straight transfer job.
Cooper Wilson Transport has been running for some 20 years and supplies a short and medium haul service to the farms of Northland, and Tex reckons they've been well and truly repaid with customer loyalty.
Yeah, mate, the cock has been really great in this area. And, you know, like the really great support, and that's why we're still here. And we still enjoy our job. We've always had the passion for trucking, mate, you know, and so that's what we enjoy. We love it. Can't all be doctors, mate. Yeah, we've got some good drivers here, mate, real good drivers. That's a big part of the business, any business. You know, guys really will look after their trucks. Good drivers, well-maintained vehicles, you know, it's a secret. And the old story, polite to the customers. So one thing here, mate, we just tell them, don't upset the cockies.
It's a 3-hour run up the Cape, and the DAF is soon reversing onto the loading ramp at Turiati Shearing Shed, but not without some little traction problem. These lambs have been weaned, and they run well under the direction of the stockman. And of course, the ever-present dogs. Fully loaded, it's time to hit the road again. I just had to ask Tex why a DAF truck for this fairly challenging country.
See you guys come up from Auckland here, and they've always wanted to get one in the north because it's sort of renowned for its terrain and that. And most truck salesmen, if it lasts in the north, it'll last anywhere. So it's probably a good test for it. So it's just new to us as well. We've only had it for a month or so, so it's still early times for us as well. But so far, so good with the old DAF. Yeah, she's going all right.
As the sheep rattle off, it's just about time to call it a day for this odyssey to Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud. It's such a beautiful country. We've travelled from Bluff in the south to Cape Reinga under its lighthouse in the north. We've tasted life in New Zealand and the taste is sweet. The lifestyle here is probably one of the best kept secrets in the world. On the roads, the truckies and their families are such a friendly mob. It's been a privilege to travel with them.